And do you see the live when it comes up? There.
Yes.
Okay, we're on.
Yes.
Very good. We have Dr. Sarah Satterfield. We're going to talk about what's in your marathon lunch bunch. In other words, what the heck do you eat and drink out there? I put stuff on marathon runners on Facebook, and I got A to Z and all kinds of stuff. And it was interesting, but there wasn't anything conclusive. They talked about tailwind, they talked about pretzels, they talked about having a lot of them carried their own hydration because then they didn't have to depend on the hydration station having what they wanted, which I thought was interesting. So I guess from marathons on up to ultra running, I guess they have their own vest. I know you talked about Nathan's vest. It's Nathan's, I think.
Yes. Nathan's,
Yeah,
yes.
and but I'm going to go with one first, and then you can talk about it. And I'm going to try this, and it's called Bob's Pickle Pops. Now, a lot of cyclists use this, and the people in marathon runners on Facebook said the ones that did try this say for cramps, it reduces cramps. In other words, they don't cramp up because it has a lot of salt in it. And this is frozen right now. So I guess you could use it as an ice pack or something, but you could put it out on the table, like put it in a cup and clip the tops, and they could just pick it up and then, use it or drink it while they're going down there, flip it in the basket, and then you just put more in the container. I don't know how many you would go through. I don't know if every person would grab one of these. I guess it would be on what their need is. But if you're really cramping up, they say that this really, really helps. And there's a place in Texas that has pickle pop or pickle shots. They're called shots. Maybe we talked about it before, but can you imagine that like a little cup or something like that? But I thought these were a little nifty because it wouldn't really come out, and you can do like when you were a kid, you push the pop up and that kind of thing. It's easy to carry and everything, and keep you a little cool. So, what's your favorite food, snack, or hydration when I know you've done half marathons, when you're practicing, training, or on a race? What do you like?
So I typically on a half marathon will take two things for nutrition. I'll take a goo for a few miles in at about the 10K point. I'll goo. And then I like chomps. So chomps are made by the same company sometimes as the goo. And they have different flavored chomps. And you can just eat one of those every couple of seconds. Yeah, goo. Salted caramel. That's a great flavor. Some people like
that?
Ones that have caffeine. Yes. Yes, that's my go-to flavor. The good one. Yeah,
Good.
Something like peanut butter that might not appeal to a lot of people, like that flavor. So you've got to be careful with your flavors. But when I do like Space Coast Half Marathon, they'll typically have different flavor goos, and one person's holding up a vanilla goo, one person's holding up maybe some kind of berry flavor, and you choose which one you want. Because you are running by the aid station, you're not going to linger for an extended period of time. But a half marathon, I think a goo is sufficient, and then maybe an orange or banana for some potassium along the way. But you would not need much more than that. And then typically in terms of hydration, they'll offer water, and that's great to grab 1 cup to drink and 1 cup to splash on your head. And then also Gatorade, or kind of substitute for Gatorade. Gatorade is tried and true. That's my favorite, but they are offering different alternatives on races today. And then like you were mentioning, a lot of people do carry their own hydration. Many people are using the Tailwind products now and just carrying that hydration with them. I don't like to have anything on my back when I'm running, so I just prefer to take whatever's available at the aid station.
One thing about Gatorade I wanted to bring up is there is very little of the powder, the containers, the powder one. They're really, really hard to find. I mean, even Sam's, Walmart, you'd have to order them online. But I don't know about you, but you go into Walmart, and the one I go in, there's no powdered Gatorade. So I don't know why, but you need the powdered one to make the stuff in the igloo. We use the bottled ones, but they can be a pain. But go ahead.
Yeah, so that's good. And then at the close of the race, typically runners want something carbs in it. It's very common to have beer at the finish line of races, triathlons. I'm doing the BDR series in Safety Harbor this coming weekend, the 10K, 5K on Saturday, the half marathon on Sunday. And they have a lot of great food at the finish line. They have pizza at the finish line. They'll bring in like frozen yogurt. They have beer at the finish line. They have soft drinks at the finish line. And that's one thing that they're really known for is the big after party with a great selection of food.
Now, speaking of that, I don't know if you remember at the Maryland, I did have Coca-Cola, and it, I'd say 60% took the Coca-Cola. And I didn't think it's the first time I had it, but they like the Coke, and I'll have it again.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing some people said were the pretzels, and you can put.
Yes.
My wife said there's a little pretzels. They kind of look either like a waffle or like an insignia, figure eight thing. And I guess you could put them in a small cup. Have you ever tried the pretzels while you're running? What did you think?
So for the Awesome Sauce events here in town, that's one thing that they do. Get a little small disposable cup and just one serving, so just a couple of pretzels, a few potato chips. You want to replenish your salt, especially if you're running in the hot summer months or even the spring months, and you just pop that in your mouth as you are running. But I think one serving is perfectly sufficient for a salty. On the Space Coast, on the BDR races, they don't have anything like that out. It's all prepackaged stuff like the goos that I was mentioning before.
Now, one thing on the goo, and I wish they did it, Cliff bars, they have a little plastic loop. So when you rip this off, it stays attached to the packet. Now, I'm dating myself. I don't know if you remember this, but and you can ask your students this. Remember the Coke cans when they went to, but when you pop the tab, do you remember when the tab didn't stay on top of the can? You ripped it off? No. Please tell me you remember that. No? Well, okay.
No.
I'll tell you why they did that, because in those days people would take it off when they go up to the stop sign or the light. You'd see like maybe half a pound of aluminum tabs there, like trash. So now you should ask your students. The other thing, I'm digressing a little, is why do they put the seals over sour cream and aspirin and so forth? Do you remember? You should remember 85 when the guy was putting poison pills in the Tylenol. Yeah, that's when the seals on everything. And when you think about it, it was kind of stupid before that. You could go up to sour cream, lift the lid off, go like that and eat it and put the lid back on. So I guess some tragedy ends up being, something that we work on. But on the food and everything, the packaged stuff, I would think that would be difficult. Like, say, a cinnamon roll or something, and you'd have all these packs all over. How would you run and rip it open? I guess you could. I mean, do you think StreamYard has it down, or not StreamYard, but Best Damn Race has it down to a science with that? Do people like that?
It's really difficult sometimes to open the goo. And the goo is not so bad, but I was mentioning the Chomp or the Cliff bars, and those are more difficult to open. So I've had trouble on races trying to tear those things open. So the thing about goo is they are very easy to open. But it is hard because as soon as you open it, you want to chunk the top to it. And sometimes I do races like in national parks and in different kind of preserves, and you don't want to litter. So it's very important to have trash cans by. Most people are very cognizant of not littering. So just have somewhere to throw their trash close to the aid station.
So we talked about also the bananas, cut them in half and put them there in a basket or a bin or something. They can take that and eat it while they're running and then heave the skin in the basket. Or that's not too bad if the
Yeah.
skin it decomposes or an animal eats it, but all the plastic is especially cellophane. So that
Mhm.
takes years for that to break down. So the bananas would be a plus. I'm trying to remember everything else that the marathon runners on Facebook said. Tailwind was one, but a lot of them said about carrying their own water, hydration, and things to eat. So I think, and I asked a question about on the out and back, we talked about. So on the out and back, they would be able to get a couple times where they go to the one station and it would be okay, replenished, and they can wouldn't run out of anything. So that's what I'm looking at because when you're going down 13 miles and you have every 2 miles, it's tough to keep everything, um,
Mhm.
stocked. And we know that your 15K that you had in Gainesville, if you don't have volunteers there, then you have to make a
Yeah.
guesstimate on who's going to take water at that stop or food or whatever. And sometimes it's a little tricky. So it's tough. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Just kind of one of the things you mentioned was the cellophane, and there's a move now in racing toward no waste in racing. There's a series called Vacation Races, an excellent series, and they do a little pouch that you can hook on your spy belt or on your waistband. And at the aid stations, you literally fill up your own pouch. There is no waste whatsoever. Space Coast Half Marathon. There's several like down in the Cocoa Beach area that attract many, many runners, thousands of runners. And I know Gasparilla recently, and you're running right there along the water, the bay. Diffusky Half Marathon and Marathon is a couple weekends back, and you don't want to that cut out and possibly get into the water, possibly injure wildlife. So it's definitely a really big issue now. How to dispose of it is a challenge for runners to have to fill their own cups at aid stations, especially if you're in it to win it and you're running fast. You don't want to take the time to do that. So that's why a lot of people are carrying their own aid. They say never to
Well,
try anything new race day. So you don't want to try new nutrition, just the luck of the draw.
let me ask you a question now. Let's say Space Coast, how many jugs, containers do they have at each table? Because if you just have one, you could have three people standing in line. They're not going to like that because it
Yeah,
screws up their time. So what do they do?
sure. And Space Coast has everything laid out. And I didn't do Space Coast this year. I haven't done it during the COVID periods. I'm not sure how they've addressed that issue. But at the race I did this past weekend, the 15K, they had one table that had all the water set out. They had a table that had Gatorade set out. And they had an arrow said, come here for water, come here for Gatorade. And there were no issues with it running out. So I'm not sure how they predicted how many people would need it, but it did not run out. But that is a challenge, knowing how much to put out, keeping it cold, keeping things hygienic because you don't want gnats and mosquitoes to get into the
Right.
aid, which I have seen
But
happen.
at Space Coast, they had it where you had to go up and fill up your cup. Is that what you're
No,
saying?
no, Space Coast. The last time I did Space Coast, everything was laying out on a table. The
Oh,
one where you
okay.
had to fill it up was the Fusky Half Marathon. And I brought my own hydration, so I did not stop at all at the aid stations. And if you're in it for time, you might not want to slow down. But at the vacation races, years back, they had one to the Everglades. And obviously, that's a pristine area. You don't want to damage the environment at all. And there was a line to fill up your little cup at those aid stations.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's sticky wicket as far as pleasing everybody, but right now with the open cups, if you don't have a volunteer, I worry about that. Bugs or
Mm-hmm.
people maybe picking it up and spilling it on something else now the other option is there a company that has these plastic cups reusable, and we talked about that where they put them out at the hydration stations. My only thing is, how do you know those cups are clean?
Yes, I would not trust that at all. And to my knowledge, I have not done a race that had those in it. I did the Publix half marathon back in 20, so right before COVID hit, and they had paper cups so that they were theoretically biodegradable. But the challenge was that was pre-COVID, and so they had volunteers handing those out. And I remember at one of the aid station, the little boy was taking a sip out of each one before he handed it to runners. So you've got to trust your volunteers. I said, no, thank you. No, don't want that cup. I think I'll pass by this aid station. You've got to be able to trust your volunteers.
Or wait a minute. He has a cup and he's like this. Here, you want this one?
And it was great.
Wait a minute. Here,
you have to be able to trust the volunteers. I think sometimes.
Hey, I told you about the one girl in college who said at the race, "Oh, we might be running out of cups. So when you're done, can you put the cups back on the table and we're going to reuse them?" Now, maybe that college chick went to the bars and sucked up all the beer from everybody but that was not a good time to say that.
No, especially during the past 3 years, you don't want to take any chances. You want people to be able to trust what you're giving them. And so you've been doing the small water bottles, and that's great. Big water bottles would create a lot of waste because people don't want to carry it with them. Yes. But the small ones, you can take a few drinks and then throw it to the side.
Yeah, the 16 or 20 ounce, you'd have to carry those a long way to get all the water down, and I think it would make you bloated. So the 8 ounce they work very well. So there is, if you have the time, there is a thought where you could put the little they're like little, the hydration ones, like a powder like Tailwind or something else into each bottle, but boy, that would take a long time to do that.
Yeah.
But I think I want to try the pickle pop, and we talked about this, and you've with your doctor about testing and variables and all that, covariates, all that stuff. And my thought is, you test it. If it doesn't work, get rid of it. But you're not going to know if this works unless you try it. Now, the one that I use for hydration, I'm going to test this one, is from Slay RX, and it's called Diesel. And based on what we talked about with my situation, gastric bypass, I need something that has electrolytes and energy in it. Okay. This goo is completely for energy. People should not mistake this as electrolytes. There's no electrolytes in this goo packet. It's all for energy. So when you're taking it, it's energy. But when I mix my bottle up with this, it has electrolytes and it has energy, and I don't cramp with it. So it keeps me going, and I don't want to cramp while I'm riding. I had that. I could hardly get out of the truck one time. My wife had to kind of pull my legs out, and I'm like stiff as a board trying to get out of the truck because I had the worst cramps. It is not, a good thing to have, but anything. But what is your favorite drink? Or I know you use that Propel, right?
Propel. Yep. I drink a lot of Propel.
How about food? What's your favorite food?
Probably bananas. In terms of race nutrition, I like bananas on a course, just because you feel like you do get a burst of sugar, carbohydrate, potassium, the things that you need to replenish on the route. Oranges are good, a bit of sweetness along the way. Like I said, I'm doing BDR Safety Harbor this coming weekend. And one year there was a Girl Scout troop about halfway out of the course, and they gave out Girl Scout cookies. Hands down, the best thing ever.
Really?
That is not proper nutrition, but boy, was it what we needed about halfway through that race.
Well, cookies isn't a bad idea, especially for me. I have a difficult time, which we talked about that about I can't eat steak or I have to have it pulverized. But when I got cookies, those bad boys go down really good. No indigestion, nothing. So I can see the cook. The other thing is the M&Ms. I can eat 2 handfuls of those babies. I don't have a
Yeah.
problem. So the cookies, especially
Yes.
if you have sugar cookies, they don't have a lot of chips or any other concoctions. The Girl Scouts, they still have those sugar cookies, right? I think they
I
do.
think so.
I love
Yep, they
sugar
do.
cookies. I can eat 5 or 6 of them at a time, and I have no problems digestion. Matter of fact, I'll have to think about the cookies, But there was one. We used to do this, but there's one cycling event up in Atlanta, and they had their claim to fame was oatmeal. What is it called?
Yeah.
Oatmeal raisin cookies, and people would
Yes.
just go there for the cookies, and they were good. We tried it one year; the people loved it. We didn't have any extra, so maybe that's a good idea. I like cookies. I think that you can digest those. You didn't have any problems eating the Girl Scout cookies, right?
No, not at all. At the Rails to Trails, which is the cycling event down in Inverness, they had a little concoction, and I'm trying to remember. I think it was an Oreo and then a little bit of peanut butter and banana on top of that. So it was a single bite, a bite or two, and you could just pop that in your mouth. That was very good.
Okay, so
Oreos are easy to go down.
yes, how would you put them in a bag or lay them out on the tray and they would grab one, or what do you think?
If you're minimizing waste, like maybe a muffin tin, like a small muffin tin, each one would hold
Right.
a single one. And that's paper that's biodegradable, it's not plastic. And you could do the same thing for the pretzels or the the potato chips. Just put a little tiny serving in a small muffin tin, muffin cup, and that would work.
Yeah, I I don't know. For the cyclists, they could had time to digest the oatmeal um,
Yes.
raisin cookie. So um, for runners, no, I guess you could. Uh, for me, it's not a problem, but I don't. I can cycle as long as I'm not drinking. I can eat just about anything. But um, I don't know. Cookies are an idea. So we're looking at. Here's what I'm thinking of doing. Salted caramel. I think everybody would like that, goo, and put it down at the one place where on the Hawthorne they're going to come back, get the goo and go, and then we'll try the pickle pups. And if you see anybody running down like this, they're out of a problem with it. you know? So there's always a first time.
Yeah.
But anyway. Okay, next week.
Yep.
I haven't checked you out. Hopefully, if you're available on Tuesday, I know you're busy with your class and everything. Oh, and don't forget to ask them about why is there seals now on everything they buy. I bet they probably won't know.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
came about? Is there a tragedy that comes up and we make a solution to not have the tragedy again? So anyway, but next Friday I'm going to try and get Debbie on, and I'll probably go out at the pavilion. That's where the squirrels are with the internet, and I won't have anybody drop from it. So, we're just about done with the snow up here, and it's warm. It's like 53 degrees today. What's it down there? 71?
70s.
Really?
Yeah, very nice in the 70s. I'm pretty sure it's nice. It was cold this morning. I ran this morning. It was in the 30s, but warm now.
Really? Oh, was it?
Mm-hmm.
I ride better when it's colder, like 50 or 60, but 80, 90, I feel like I'm sucking in hot air. It's tough. And based from chemistry, the oxygen and so forth with hot air, it's not as dense as cold air. So when it's cold and everything, I'm ready to go. But You know that if it's
Yeah.
90 degrees down there, you have a tough time running
It's
down
oppressive.
there. And the sweat and
The
the other,
heat makes a difference too.
yeah. Well, Sarah, I'm going to just to let you know that Debbie does teach music. I couldn't believe it when she told me that, but and she's got into running when she was 40. So it was interesting. So we'll see if
Yeah.
she can get on next week and we'll come up with a different topic. All right.
Okay.
I'll see
Sounds
you.
great.
All right. See you.